that level where we were talking about virtual communities, churches. You have churches, you have sales. And that's the point I wanted to make when I started talking about David Yongichi and what he brought into the church. That there are sales in our churches, okay? But there are sales already in the virtual community. The virtual community just means that there is as real a community in the space, as it were. Just imagine it that way. There are these people, they are real people. We may never meet them on this side of heaven. We may never see them here, but they are real. And a lot of them we will see in heaven. Something about this is that everyone can actually have a cell. Everybody actually has a potential community. Let's start like this. I don't know how many people do you have on your contacts, on your phone? Do you have an idea? Can you give me a rough estimate of how many? Sit down. You have about 200, more than 200, maybe 400 on your contacts. You alone. On my phone. Just you. You can imagine that. How many do you think you might have? About 250, 300. What about you? Over 500. Can you imagine that? Between the two of you, you probably have close to 1,000. Imagine that. And let this go on like that. Even the kids at home, they've got their own contacts. Potential sales. Contacts, that means people that I am in contact with. I have the means to reach them. I can communicate with, hear me, and hear me well. Years ago, in the first world, take this as world number 3, okay? First one, the communal rural world. Second one, the urban city world. Third one, the virtual media world. Okay, let's look at it like this. In that first world, anybody could come knock on your door. You know? Everybody knew everybody in the community. It was a rural community. They all knew themselves in church. They all knew themselves in the area. They knew themselves in that estate. Everybody knew everybody. They were cousins and distant cousins and so on and so forth. You had no fear of who was coming to your door. You just opened your door. And he told you he was your cousin. And all he had to mention was his father's name or his uncle's name and so on. And you, oh, yes, coming. Then in the city, something began to happen. People became strangers. You see, because everybody's come from somewhere else. And we all came to look for something in the city. And the major motivation for most people in the city was money. And because it was scarce, everybody wanted to keep back his money. And so the competition came. Suspicion with it. So when someone's coming to your door, you think he's coming for your stuff. Knock, knock, and you stay behind and say, You don't know, should I answer, should I not answer? You want to see him first. And if you have a dog, you let him loose on him. So you're thinking, it's a different world, a different life. Strangers. And we don't trust ourselves now. I want to know you before I become your friend. So world number 2 has a different life. Security is a concern. Is that right? It's a concern. So we're hiding. We're careful of the guy next door. We don't know what he does for a living. I can't trust him. Have you ever seen him? No. In fact, the designs of the houses began to change. and change and change and change and change and change until you couldn't tell who was living in the same building with you. You have never seen his face, and you've been in this house 12 years. You've never seen that guy's face. If you don't live in those kind of houses, you may not know yet, but maybe soon. Because the guy drives into his house. Before, he doesn't have to come down to open the doors. As he approaches the gate, it opens. He passes, it closes. He gets to the doors, they open. He enters, it goes down. You never see him. You just never know who he is. The kids never come out to play. He doesn't care about you either. And if there's never a fire in the house, you'll never know him, because when trouble comes, everybody knows everybody. Because people want help from others. See what I mean? So that's that second word. Distance, even though we're close. I don't know you. Okay? What about the virtual world? In the virtual world, first of all, there's something about this other world. You know, people don't know your name. They're more concerned about what you do. He never remembers what you called yourself. And he says, oh, managing director of so and so. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about your name. They want to know what you do, not your family's name. You see, we find ourselves in the social invisibility. We're not known, even though we're there. In this third world, they don't even use their names. And so people hide behind anything. Call yourself any name. And that's okay. Can you see it now? You're trying to know someone on the internet? You're kidding. Even if he puts his real name, you can't be sure that's his real name. In fact, most people that still have their real names on their emails and on the internet for some reason, they're those who started with Yahoo at the beginning. And they were afraid. They didn't know. We were very honest. I mean, the internet just came, and we were so honest, we thought they were that honest too. And everywhere you saw name, you put your full name, date of birth. You wrote everything. You thought you were answering questions for an exam. A few years later, you started regretting that you gave them all that information. You were so honest back then. But times have changed. Now you realize it's another world altogether. Now what am I telling you? There is a virtual but real world. That's the irony. How can something be virtual and real at the same time? But that's what you have on the internet. You see. So those people, and here's the beautiful thing, especially with the, I would say, the social sites like Facebook made this popular. There were others before Facebook, but Facebook really made this kind of a thing popular. Okay? This connection that we can have with a lot of people. And then came Twitter. Okay? And of course, from Twitter came UCOS. Okay? Yes. And we began to do more of that. But what's going on there? I want to explain it to you. I want to explain it to you so you can catch what is really happening in the world. It is social connection, which human beings have always wanted. They always wanted to be able to express themselves without necessarily revealing themselves. It's part of human fear. He has something to say, but he's not bold enough to say, I said it. So he hides behind a pseudonym. See? We don't have to be like that. But that's the way it works. And that's why I say to people, if you're in a church and maybe you don't like something that's going on, don't write an anonymous letter to the pastor. It could destroy you. Are you hearing me? Don't write an anonymous letter to the pastor, whether good or bad. When you want to write to a man of God, put your name. Because what he says will happen whether your name is there or not. And you know something? He may not be offended by the things you wrote. He may be offended by you not putting your name. And his offense can come not by himself, but by the Spirit that provokes him to make a statement about the one who wrote this letter. And it could destroy you. So instead, if you're writing something to a man of God, put your name. Because as a man of God, if he feels bad about it, he'll probably still call you and talk to you and say, this is what you should have done. He will guide you. A man of God has a responsibility. A real man of God will not take offense at whatever you say to him or do to him. So you never have to be bothered about what might happen. No. He can only and should only express the nature of God. So if it is something you are glad about and you want to write him, don't make it anonymous. If it is something you're unhappy about and you want to write him, don't make it anonymous. And teach your brethren about what I just told you. Because God provokes us to bless. And we don't ever want him to provoke us to say something that is not for someone's advantage. Are you hearing me? Yes, sir. Yes. So I said that because I was talking about the anonymity behind which a lot of people hide on the internet. That even though that's the game in the social media, it doesn't mean it is recommended because there's a reason for it. The reason for it is negative. And so we don't have to do it. But on the internet, it's acceptable if you're using whatever name you want to use. It's going to come to you anyway. And by the way, like they say, you can run, but you can't hide. So if you have a device and you are connected to the internet, hear me and hear me well. You may think they can't find you, but that is self-deception. Every device that connects to the internet is immediately given a special address by which you can be located anywhere in the world. It will tell the time that you last used it. It will tell the place where you used it, and they can trace who bought it and who gave it to who. If they're going to find you, they will find you, whoever it is. If that person is interested in finding you, there are just a few calls he has to make. It doesn't have to be the government. It can be a friend of yours. If he's interested in finding you for what you wrote, he will find you. It doesn't cost too much money. Your address is there. Was it always possible? Yes, it was always possible. But they didn't use it because it wasn't necessary. But in a day of fear, of terror, and so on and so forth, they began to pull out these possibilities for their advantage. So make no mistakes about it. Don't think that if you are doing something on the internet and writing your name backwards, they will never find you. They don't need to find your name. They just find what is in your hand. And everywhere you go with it, it's following you.